Good morning. Sunday morning recap. I hope you guys enjoyed the fights last night. Few thoughts. I'm just gonna comment on two of the fights. I don't think anything turned out surprising. I don't think there were any surprising results. Benavidez getting the stoppage win over Andrade, and Charlo getting the decision win versus Jose Benavidez Jr. Let's start with the main event. I'm actually not going to talk much about the fight. It was very one-sided. But what I will say is this, that from the human point of view, if there's anybody walking the face of planet Earth that knows just how, unfortunately, two-faced that human beings can be, it is David Benavidez. And the reason I say that is he does mention, hey, I was that little fat kid that nobody believed in. And when he says that, he's not lying. I mean, I met David, Jose Jr. and Jose Sr. when they came to Wild Card. I think it was sometime in the mid to late 2000s. And they basically set up shop in LA at Wild Card. And at that time, Jose Jr., David's older brother, was the talk of the gym because he was, I think, just still a teenager, but doing very well in the versus adult men, and he looked the part. He was always slim, cut. He showed his skills in the ring. He stood his own with with adult men as a teenager. And Jose Sr. was there every day with them too, as their coach. But at that point, David was probably about, I think, maybe 8 or 9 or 10, around that age. And he wasn't just a little chubby. He was really round. But he was also quiet. He never said boo to a goose in that gym, and kind of just stayed back in the background. And I'm sure he probably caught a lot of those sideways glances from adults, just kind of look at him like, what are you doing here, kid? One, because he's young, two, because he's overweight and he doesn't look like the athlete that his older brother is. Older brothers, cut, got the six-pack, all of that. But I do remember one day, there's the main ring in the sort of front entrance. When you walk in, you see the main ring. That's an elevated ring, and that's where all the pros have dibs on that front ring. And then there's another floor ring in what used to be a second room. It's now sort of made into one big giant room, but there's a second ring that's a floor ring. It's not elevated, and either pros will use that when they just can't get the ring time in the elevated ring, or later on, people once the sparring frenzy dies down, people will use that back ring more for mitts or whatever. But that second area in Wild Card is also where there's some space to do your ab work or your conditioning, etc. after you've done your main workout. So it's kind of where people go after they're done with everything and kind of trying to cool down and maybe do their abs, stretch out. So one day I was in that area and the Benavidez were there with a few other people, and I remember distinctly Jose Jr. said, referring to his brother David, who was just kind of off to the side in the corner, he goes, oh yeah, he can fight, he's got hands. And I can remember, you just sort of feel people kind of in their mind saying, oh yeah, sure, right, that kid, like, whatever, kind of dismissive about him, because unfortunately for him, everybody judged the book by its cover, so I remember feeling kind of bad for him at that point, because I guess it's the school teacher in me, don't like to see anybody kind of being made to feel bad for no reason. There's no reason to make this little kid feel bad about himself. He's at the gym because his older brother and his dad are there. I mean, just let him be. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna try to start a conversation with this kid just for the heck of it. So while we're all kind of sitting there doing our sit-ups and stuff, I was just like, oh, hey, so what'd you do this weekend? And told me they went to some adventure park or something like that. I was like, oh, was it fun? You know, trying to generate a conversation with a young person is just ask them what's fun for them, right? And he said yeah, and he told me about a couple rides or something, but it kind of went over my head because I'm not really familiar. But in any case, I think that he remembered that, because fast forward to maybe 4 years later or so, I think the Benavidez had gone back to Arizona, and then they were back in LA for camp or something. But I remember when you walk in a wild card, you walk up the stairs, walk through the door, and the change rooms are immediately off to your right. So most people go in there, change, come out, and then there's these little benches along the wall. Sit down there to put on your boxing shoes. So that's exactly what I did. I just kind of automatic pilot sat down on that bench to start putting on my boxing shoes without even taking in what's going on in the rest of the gym yet. And as I'm lacing up, out of the corner of my eye, I see this figure heading towards me from across the gym. I'm thinking, oh, what's up with this? You know, and then comes up to me, looks me in the eye, shakes my hand. I'll say, hey, good to see you. I say, hey, good to see you, but I didn't recognize who it was at first. I'm thinking, darn, I don't know this guy's name to say, hey, so-and-so, you know? But then I look up and I see Jose Benavidez Sr., and then I go, oh my goodness, this is that kid. This is the little boy. Now he's like probably about 15, and he hit a growth spurt. He's just like double the height, and slimmed down some because he hit his growth spurt. So it was like, that was pretty cool to just to notice. Okay, great, you know, like you grew up a bit, you know, you hit your growth spurt, you know, you're still fighting, you're still boxing, you're still doing this. All right, awesome. You know, that's a reward in of itself to see somebody's progress. And then of course, you know, fast forward to now, and David is who he is. He probably will be one of the best of this era if he just continues on the path that he's following. But my point is, I'm sure he, in his heart, has probably had to forgive a lot of people, or either that, or he just lets it roll off his back, because all the people that kind of looked down on him when he was that little fat kid at Wildcard or whatever gym, I mean, who are they? We don't know who they are. No, they're not. Their names are not coming out of any of our mouths this morning because they're unknown. So why should David pay them any mind, right? But I guess my point is, he knows who they are. I'm sure he kind of remembers anybody that made him feel kind of bad as a little kid, but I'm sure he's, hopefully, you know, he's got to be past it, just given where he's at in terms of accomplishing his goals and where he's at in life. But my bigger point is, you know, this seems to happen in boxing a lot, maybe even a little more than in other sports I've participated in, but people around the periphery of boxing, like not the athletes because they're the ones in there, not so much a really good coach because they're also the ones that are right in there, but it's the people, the hangers-on, the journalists, the wannabe managers, and the guys that have just come to the gym to hang out and try to let their 2 cents be heard, or try to pick up some gossip or something. Those people, they're the ones that judge books by the cover. So they take great pride in thinking they can say, oh, that guy's going to be the next world champion. And then they look at other people, forget them. They're not going anywhere, right? They just like to be the people that, I don't know, somehow that builds their ego because they think they can pick a winner in advance or something. Shows how smart they are. I don't know. I don't understand that mindset, but those types of people really tend to gravitate to boxing, and bottom line is, don't judge a book by its cover, and you should never look down on a little kid anyways, no matter what, whether they're in sports or they're involved in something else. I mean, because you never know what that little kid is going to grow up to be. So don't sneer at them, don't look down your nose at them, don't laugh at their dreams or whatever it is, you know. I'll give you another case in point. Judo. There was a young man I met many years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. His name was Mark Fletcher, and at the time he was maybe 12 or 13, and he was a blue belt competing in, kids divisions. And he was kind of chubby. he wasn't as chubby as David Benavidez, but he was a little bit chubby, and also very soft-spoken and quiet. And I remember going out to lunch with Mark and another judo mom who was kind enough to take us out, and while we were partway through the conversation, he was just so quiet. She just turned and looked at him and said, Mark, I can tell you're going to grow up to be a very handsome young man. And that kind of brought a smile to his face, and it brought something out of him, and that was really very kind and sweet of her to say something, so sort of reassuring to him, because I know he didn't have it easy growing up. I believe he grew up with his in his grandmother's house. I'm not sure, but there may not have been a lot going on for him, and judo was just certainly an arena that he could explore. But he did not look like future world champion type material at that time either. Okay, again, fast forward maybe 5 years, the 12-year-old is now like a 17, 18-year-old, and he hit his growth spurt. So at the age of 17, 18, he was ripped, shredded, he was big, he'd grown into a young man, and he was doing really well with judo internationally. He made junior teams, he got to travel overseas. He did well, so again, you don't want to look down on a little kid just because they look like this or they look like that, they're too skinny, they're too fat, whatever. You just don't know where a young person's going to take themselves. So don't be that person that looks down on them when they're a little kid and then starts trying to suck up to them when they start winning as a young man or as a young adult. So I mean, it'd be interesting to hear. I'm sure David Benavidez has more class than to start. Why would he even bother talking about people that weren't kind to him when he was a lot younger? But my point is, don't be that person that thinks they can pick out the next anointed world champion. Just look at somebody's work ethic and praise the work ethic. Don't praise what they look like. It's not about what they look like. Second thing I wanted to comment on was the Sergei Lipinets fight against, I think the fellow's name was Michael Rivera. Lipinets lost the unanimous decision, and he did lose that fight, but I felt that the commentators on the YouTube channel were a little bit biased. It felt like sometimes, fighters will throw almost simultaneously in an exchange, and I felt like the commentary was always sort of sided towards Rivera. Oh, great left hook by Rivera. Well, Lipinets just landed his left hook also, but you guys didn't comment on that. Or they were just mostly critiquing what Sergei was not doing, and not so much criticism in towards Rivera. The only thing I could say in terms of Sergei's performance was he has kept throwing that looping overhand right. If it had been just a tad straighter, it might have landed. A couple fights ago, I saw that he had straightened out that right hand, so I'm not sure what the difference was for this fight in terms of the preparation. But I hope to see Sergei back in the ring just because he's a great fighter. He works really hard. He's a good guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was training in North Hollywood. He's quiet, serious, but once you get to know him, he's got a great sense of humor. He's really smart, and he's a good person. So hopefully we see Sergei in another good fight. A few more good fights. You know, he did have that. I think I'm not sure if he still holds that interim or a belt. But you know, he's still up there in the rankings. So he always comes to fight. So I hope we see more of him. And I'm sure he's smart enough to address whatever he needs to address between now and his next fight. So, for me, kind of a disappointing loss to see him take, but that was a fair outcome given that performance. So, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the fights last night. Tell me what you. So please share with me what you thought of the fights last night in the comments below. Thank you.